Hey everyone, and welcome back to English as a Second Language. I'm David, and it's always such a pleasure to have you here with me. Whether you're listening while you're having your morning coffee, taking a walk, or just relaxing at home, I'm really glad you decided to spend some time with me today. We're continuing with our IELTS series, and today we're going to explore a question that comes up a lot in IELTS speaking and writing tasks, but it's also something that affects all of us in real life. Today's topic is job satisfaction more important than salary? This is one of those questions that doesn't have a simple yes or no answer, and that's exactly why it makes for such an interesting discussion. I think you'll find today's conversation really thought-provoking, whether you're preparing for IELTS or just thinking about your own career choices. Now, before we dive into the main discussion, I want to let you know that my good friend Tom will be joining us at the end of today's episode to review some really useful vocabulary. Tom has this wonderful way of breaking down words and phrases that makes them so much easier to remember, so definitely stick around for that part. All right, let's get started with a question that might hit close to home for many of you. Imagine this scenario. You're offered two different jobs. The first job pays really well, maybe 30% more than what you're earning now. But the work is boring, the hours are long, and you don't really feel passionate about what you'd be doing every day. The second job pays less money, but it's exactly the kind of work you've always dreamed of doing. You'd wake up excited to go to work, you'd feel like you're making a difference, and you genuinely enjoy your daily tasks. Which job would you choose? This is the heart of today's discussion, and I bet many of you have faced this exact dilemma at some point in your lives. Let me start by sharing a story about my friend Lisa. A few years ago, Lisa was working as an accountant at a large corporation. The pay was excellent. She was earning more money than most of her friends. She had a nice apartment, could afford to go on vacations, and never had to worry about paying her bills. From the outside, it looked like she had the perfect job, but Lisa was miserable. Every Sunday night, she would get this sinking feeling in her stomach because she knew she had to go back to work the next day. She found the work repetitive and meaningless. She didn't feel connected to her colleagues, and she certainly didn't feel like her work was making any positive impact on the world. One day, Lisa saw a job posting for a position at a nonprofit organization that helped provide clean water to communities in developing countries. The salary was about 40% less than what she was making as an accountant. But as she read the job description, she felt something she hadn't felt in years: excitement about work. Lisa spent weeks thinking about this decision. The practical part of her brain kept saying, "You'd be crazy to take such a big pay cut. How will you afford your current lifestyle?" But another part of her kept whispering, "But what if you could actually love your job?" Eventually, Lisa made the leap. She took the job with a nonprofit organization. Yes, she had to move to a smaller apartment. Yes, she had to be more careful with her spending. But you know what? For the first time in years, Lisa looked forward to Monday mornings. She felt like her work had meaning and purpose. She was using her accounting skills to help an organization do important work in the world. 2 years later, when I asked Lisa if she regretted her decision, she laughed and said, "Are you kidding? I should have done this years ago. I'm so much happier now, even with less money in the bank." Lisa's story illustrates one side of this debate: the argument that job satisfaction is more important than salary. But let's be honest, it's not always that simple, is it? Let me tell you about another friend of mine, Carlos. Carlos grew up in a family that didn't have much money. His parents worked multiple jobs just to pay rent and put food on the table. Carlos was incredibly smart and passionate about art and music, but when it came time to choose a career, he made a very different decision than Lisa. Carlos chose to study engineering not because he loved it, but because he knew it would provide financial security. He wanted to make sure he could support his parents as they got older, And he wanted to ensure that his own children would never have to worry about money the way he did as a child. Today, Carlos works for a tech company. Is it his dream job? No. Does he sometimes wonder what his life would have been like if he had pursued his artistic interests? Absolutely. But Carlos also owns his own home. He's helping to pay for his parents' medical expenses, and he's saving money for his daughter's college education. When I talk to Carlos, he doesn't seem unhappy. He seems content with the trade-off he made. Carlos represents the other side of this argument, the idea that sometimes a higher salary is worth more than job satisfaction, especially when you have financial responsibilities and long-term goals that require money. So, which perspective is right? Well, I think the answer depends on several factors, and it's different for each person. First, let's talk about your basic needs and financial obligations. If you're struggling to pay for basic necessities like food, housing, and healthcare, then focusing on salary might be the practical choice, at least in the short term. It's hard to feel satisfied at work when you're constantly worried about paying your bills. Similarly, if you have dependents, children, elderly parents, or other family members who rely on your income, then the financial aspect of your job becomes much more important. In these situations, choosing a higher paying job that you don't love might be the responsible thing to do. However, if your basic needs are met and you don't have major financial obligations, then you have more freedom to prioritize job satisfaction. In this case, you might be able to afford to take a job that pays less but makes you happier. Another factor to consider is your stage of life. Many people choose to prioritize salary when they're younger, especially if they have student loans to pay off or if they want to save money for future goals like buying a house or starting a family. Later in life, once they've achieved some financial stability, they might shift their focus toward finding more meaningful work. I think it's also important to consider the long-term implications of both choices. If you choose a job solely for the money, but you hate what you do every day, how will that affect your mental health and overall well-being over time? Chronic job dissatisfaction can lead to stress, anxiety, and even depression. It can affect your relationships and your physical health. On the other hand, if you choose a job that you love, but that doesn't pay well, you need to think about your long-term financial security. Will you be able to save for retirement? What will happen if you have a medical emergency or other unexpected expense? Here's something interesting I've observed. The people who seem happiest in their careers are often those who have found ways to combine both job satisfaction and reasonable compensation. They might not be making the absolute highest salary possible, but they're earning enough to live comfortably while doing work that they find meaningful and engaging. This brings up an important point. You don't always have to choose between job satisfaction and salary. Sometimes you can find ways to have both. For example, you might start in a lower paying job that you love and then work your way up to higher paying positions within that field. Or you might take a high paying job initially to achieve financial stability and then transition to more satisfying work once you've met your financial goals. Another approach is to look for companies that align with your values, even if they're in a traditionally high paying field. For instance, if you're good with numbers, you might choose to work as an accountant for an environmental organization rather than a large corporation. You'd still be doing accounting work and earning a good salary, but you'd also feel like your work is contributing to a cause you care about. Let me share one more perspective on this topic. I once heard someone say, you spend about 1/3 of your adult life at work. If you're miserable for 8 hours every day, that misery will spill over into the other areas of your life too. There's a lot of truth to this statement. When you enjoy your work, you tend to be more energetic and positive when you come home. You're more likely to have good relationships with your family and friends. You might even live longer. Some studies suggest that people who are satisfied with their careers have better health outcomes than those who hate their jobs? But here's the flip side. Financial stress can also spill over into other areas of your life. If you're constantly worried about money, if you can't afford to do things you enjoy or provide for your family the way you'd like to, that stress can also affect your relationships and your health. So, what's my take on this question? I think the ideal situation is to find work that provides both reasonable financial compensation and personal satisfaction. But if you have to choose between the two, the right choice depends on your individual circumstances, your values, and your life goals. If you're young and don't have major financial obligations, you might want to prioritize job satisfaction and trust that the money will follow as you build experience and expertise in a field you love. If you have a family to support or significant financial responsibilities, you might need to prioritize salary, at least temporarily. But here's something I'd encourage you to remember. Neither choice has to be permanent. You can start with a job that pays well and then transition to more satisfying work once you've achieved your financial goals. Or you can start with a job you love and work on increasing your earning potential within that field. The key is to be intentional about your choices and to regularly reassess your priorities as your life circumstances change. What's right for you at 25 might not be right for you at 35 or 45. I also think it's worth noting that job satisfaction isn't just about loving every single task you do. Very few people, even those in their dream jobs, love every aspect of their work. Job satisfaction can come from feeling like your work has purpose, from enjoying the people you work with, from having opportunities to learn and grow, or from feeling appreciated and valued by your employer. Similarly, salary isn't just about the number on your paycheck. When you're evaluating a job's financial benefits, consider the whole package: health insurance, retirement contributions, paid time off, opportunities for advancement, and other perks that have monetary value. Before we wrap up the main discussion, let me ask you to think about your own situation. If you're currently working, how would you rate your job satisfaction versus your salary satisfaction? If you're not working yet, or if you're looking for a new job, which factor is more important to you right now and why? There's no right or wrong answer to these questions. The important thing is to think carefully about what matters most to you at this stage of your life and to make career decisions that align with your values and goals. All right, I think we've covered this topic pretty thoroughly. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, my friend Tom is here to help us review some really useful vocabulary from today's discussion. Tom, take it away.
Thanks, David. Hi, everyone. It's Tom here. I'm excited to go through some key words from today's episode with you. These are words you'll definitely hear in IELTS and in real workplace conversations. So let's make sure we really understand them. Let's start with a word that came up several times today: dilemma. Now, a dilemma is when you have to choose between two difficult options, and both choices have good and bad points. David told us about Lisa's dilemma. Should she keep her high-paying job that made her unhappy or take a lower-paying job that she would love? Lisa faced a real dilemma about her career. Let's practice that together. Repeat after me. Lisa faced a real dilemma about her career. One more time. Lisa faced a real dilemma about her career. Great. Moving on naturally, when people face dilemmas like this, they often have to make what we call a trade-off. A trade-off means giving up one thing to get something else. It's like an exchange where you can't have both things. Carlos made a trade-off when he chose engineering over art. He gave up his passion to get financial security. Here's our example. Carlos made a trade-off between his artistic dreams and financial stability. Say together. Carlos made a trade-off between his artistic dreams and financial stability. And again, Carlos made a trade-off between his artistic dreams and financial stability. Perfect. Now, this leads us to another important concept: financial security. Financial security means having enough money so you don't worry about paying for basic needs like food, housing, and healthcare. When you have financial security, you sleep better at night because you know you can handle your expenses. Our example sentence says, having financial security allowed Maria to take more risks in her career. Repeat with me. Having financial security allowed Maria to take more risks in her career. Once more, having financial security allowed Maria to take more risks in her career. Excellent. Speaking of taking risks, let's talk about the phrase to make the leap. To make the leap means to make a big, brave decision to change something important in your life. It often involves some risk, like jumping across a gap. Lisa made the leap when she left her accounting job to work for the nonprofit Pay League company. After months of thinking, Sarah finally made the leap and started her own business. And one more time, after months of thinking, Sarah finally made the leap and started her own business. Well done. Finally, let's look at a phrase that's really useful for IELTS speaking: spill over into. When something spills over into something else, it means one situation affects another area of your life. Think of water spilling over the edge of a cup. It spreads to other places. David mentioned that work stress can spill over into your personal relationships. Work problems often spill over into family life. Let's practice this together. Work problems often spill over into family life. And again, work problems often spill over into family lives. Fantastic work, everyone. These vocabulary words will really help you express complex ideas about work and life choices, especially if you're preparing for IELTS. Keep practicing them in your own conversations. Now, before we finish up today, let me ask you a few questions to help you think about what we've discussed. First, what factors do you think are most important when choosing between job satisfaction and salary? Think about your own priorities and life situation. Second, can you think of an example of a trade-off you've made in your own life, whether it's related to work, education, or another important decision? Third, do you agree that unhappiness at work can spill over into other areas of your life? Have you experienced this yourself or seen it happen to others? And finally, if you had to give advice to a friend who was facing the same dilemma as Lisa in our story, what would you tell them? As we wrap up today's episode, I want to remind you that there's no universal right answer to the question of whether job satisfaction is more important than salary. The best choice is the one that aligns with your personal values, your life circumstances, and your long-term goals. What I hope you take away from today's discussion is the importance of thinking carefully about these decisions and being honest with yourself about what matters most to you. And remember, whatever choice you make doesn't have to be permanent. Life is long, and you'll have many opportunities to reassess and adjust your priorities as you grow and change. Whether you're preparing for IELTS or just thinking about your own career path, I hope today's conversation has given you some useful vocabulary and some food for thought. Keep practicing your English, keep thinking about these important life questions, and remember that every step you take is helping you become the person you want to be. Thanks so much for joining me today on English as a Second Language. I'm David, and I'll see you next time for another episode in our IELTS series. Until then, keep learning, keep growing, and take care of yourselves.